Hello and welcome to episode 197 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. My name is Mark, I am the green tank, and with me as always are my co-tanks, Neelan, the orange one.
Hello.
And Kellen, the red one.
Is a co-tank similar to a coat-tail? Because if so, I reject that title.
No, because coat-tail, not a coat-tail, you're not sharing a tail. It's a coat-tail, it's the tail of a coat.
No, coat-tail, as in riding someone's coattails?
Yeah, coat-tail. You're riding somebody's coat-tail, you're holding onto the tail of their coat. That's where it comes from.
I'm aware. That's why I made the joke to begin it. But
on today's episode, we are going to be doing something we did just yesterday. For those of you who watched the wonderful AwShux that went on this weekend, we were fortunate enough to join Quinns, Ava, and Tom in a BGB plus Shut Up and Sit Down cross-promotional showdown where we drafted the BoardGameGeek top 100 games. We did this in teams. It was Tom and I, Neelan and Quinns, and Kellen and Ava. We did a draft as we have on previous episodes of the Board Game Barrage podcast. We had a couple twists to the way we did it. We had a destroy and draft version. So if you're interested in that, check out the show notes where we'll have a link to that day of AwShux. So we are back again drafting as we do every fifth week. A little peek behind the curtain there. Where do we do a draft every fifth week? This time we are up to games 401 to 500 according to BoardGameGeek as it stands today, October 25th, 2021. Again, another peek behind the curtain. We actually did not record this a couple hours before we release it. We recorded a couple days in advance. So, as we've done in previous episodes, we are going to be drafting 5 games from that section of the BoardGameGeek list of games, and we will leave it to you to vote at boardgamebarrage.com/draft and pick a random name from the people who vote there to get a $50 gift certificate to the online retailer of your choice. We have given hundreds of dollars in board game money away over the past couple months, and some of that money could be yours.
And another little peek behind the curtain. We don't do it randomly. We just pick our favorite person.
That is a lie. Neelan is lying there. Per FCC guidelines, we're not allowed to do that.
Board game money sounds awfully close to Monopoly money to me.
It sort of is, yeah. But you can't use Monopoly money to buy the latest Lacerda, can you, Kellen? God knows I've tried.
I can't think of anything to say.
But before we get caught up in the draft, once again, let me close that door and let's talk about the games we've played. Neelan is going to start us off with Parks. I've got a twofer in the middle where I'm going to be talking about Uwe Rosenberg's Fairy Trails, not Fairy Tales, and Abandon All Artichokes. And finally, Kellen is going to be talking to us about So Clover. Apologies for Chloe barking in the background there. And if you want to see Chloe, go ahead and click the link to the Shut Up and Sit Down video where she makes a surprise appearance. But, Neelan.
# save Chloe.
Neelan, tell us about Parks.
Yeah, so Parks is a game by designer Henry Audubon and publisher Keymaster Games. And this is...
Real quick, can I just say it's hilarious that the designer of the game about Parks is named Audubon. Isn't that nuts? Like, because the Audubon Society is like a society about like preservation, isn't it?
I don't know what you're referencing at all.
Okay, hold on. Let me just see this to make sure. Yeah, the Audubon Naturalist Society. So there's a society of people who are all about like preserving nature. And it's called the Audubon Society, and the designer of this game is like, what's his name again?
Henry Audubon. I was not familiar with that at all. That's fascinating.
This is why, Neelan, if you ever wondered why Mark wants to know what game you're covering 12 hours in advance.
So I did not know that.
Google fun facts.
It does make me wonder if it is a pseudonym, but who can say? Anyway, so Parks is a game about visiting national parks. This has a very, very cool art style, a lot of very beautifully illustrated cards depicting a whole bunch of national parks throughout the US. And the premise of the game is really, really simple mechanically. It has a movement system that will be familiar if you've played Tokaido, where there is just a linear path of locations, and all you're going to do is pick up your piece and move it to whatever open spot ahead of you want to. You cannot visit the same spot as another player has. And unlike Tokaido, you have 2 pieces to move, 2 hikers. So there are multiple positions that you can jostle for and try to get before other people do. So the game is about evaluating, okay, do I want to take this spot that's further away, but then I'll lose access to all the spots behind me? Or do I want to sort of take the spots closer in order to stop other players from getting them first? What each of these spots gives you most of the time are resources. This is first and foremost a resource contract fulfillment game. What you are mostly doing in order to get points is visiting these parks, which require each of these resources, whether it's water or the little forest icon or sunlight. I'm actually not sure thematically if it really makes any sense, but you collect cute tokens of each of these 4 or 5 different types, and at the end of each run, each season, of which there are 4 in a game, you can turn them in order to visit parks from a availability row, which means it's now yours and no one else can visit that park. Along the way, you could also take pictures. You can take photos, which will get you a point each. There's a pretty cool little mechanic here where if you're the person holding the camera token, you get access to them for cheaper, which means that if someone lets you keep that for the entire game, you could just take a lot of pictures and get a lot of points. But if someone then takes another picture instead, they get the token and steal it from you. So there's some fighting over that camera token, which I thought was cool. There's the ability to get wild resources at various points. These canteens, which are special powers that you can spend water when you get it in order to utilize. And there are also gear cards that you can buy, which you typically buy with one specific resource, the sunlight resource. And these just give you a whole wealth of different powers, making parks easier to visit over the course of the game, giving you points, and so on. Everyone also has a personal goal, which will determine what sort of parks they want to visit, what sort of gear they want to collect. But otherwise, that's the entirety of the game. It's a really, really simple affair. The one little twist in this is that the makeup of the path trail is different from game to game. There are these tiles that you assemble next to each other in order to create the trail, and you don't use every tile in every game. So there's a little bit of variance there, and the path gets longer each season. But that's kind of all of it. I thought this was a really pleasant, but ultimately just fine game. I didn't think it was amazing, especially, Tokaido is one of those games I sort of very distinctly remember from very early in my introduction to the hobby. So it kind of felt like, okay, we're revisiting this mechanic almost 10 years later with some small twists, but not enough to make it feel substantially different. And especially because Tokaido, even for its time, was an incredibly well-produced, visually stunning game. If that is one of the core appeals that Parks is bringing to this, it doesn't feel enough to separate it from Tokaido in this case. Unless you sort of have a huge love for hiking and national parks, then this would probably appeal in that sense. But otherwise, I didn't think that this was incredible. Mark, you've played Parks. What did you think about it?
I agree with you for the most part. I think this is a fine to above fine sort of level game. I would never turn it down. I don't know how often I would suggest it, although I can see places where I would. I think this is a really nice family weight game.
Yeah.
To your point about if you like national parks and that kind of thing, I think there is a market for people who are not, quote unquote board gamers, but who are interested in playing games and who love the outdoors. I think this is would make for a really nice gift for somebody who fit into that sort of niche. I think the gameplay itself is fine. Like I said, it's a solid game. It's a thing where I like a lot of the aspects to it. Like I do like the changing trail where you're never going to be sure how the actions are laid out. I do like the way that you can sort of strategically place one of your hikers, to take advantage of a resource, but you're also blocking a spot from an opponent. So that's there is actually some bite there. It's not like a completely bland, soft game. There is some aggression there. And there's also different strategies you can employ. You can go for taking a lot of parks that cost a few resources to try to get a whole bunch really quickly. You can try to get the high point parks, but that requires a bunch of resources. You can try to do the camera action where you can get a lot of points that way. I think there are a couple of different ways to play it, which make for a fun aspect to it. You don't have to take the same route as everybody else. You can go your own way.
I think you're certainly right on one thing, which I think the 2 hiker system is actually a fairly neat twist. It does do one thing that annoyed me more than anything, which is with the parks array, it has that thing where like you'll visit a park and then a new one comes out and you're like, oh, that one was better. Oh, now that one's really good for a specific player. The next card that gets revealed might be really good for someone. Problem, it felt pretty prevalent to me. But again, it's light enough that it's hard to be too frustrated at that.
Yeah, and you can always like jump one of your hikers ahead if you really want to grab a park, but that does come at quite a cost. It's probably a disproportional cost. So that strategy is not really, I think, that viable. One thing I will say though is if you really like that changing action path that Parks has where the set of actions is shuffled up and dealt differently every round, and you want to play a much better game that does it, play Francis Drake. Francis Drake does the same thing in the first phase of the game where you're getting the provisions for your ship, and it does that thing where the actions that you can select are randomized and you can go as far down the path as you want, that same sort of thing. But Francis Drake is an incredible game.
If you bought Parks for your 6-year-old, but your 6-year-old is so much smarter than all the other 6-year-olds, play Francis Drake. I'm sure they'll love it.
That's right.
The Tokaido system has always struck me as like there's a really fun push and pull here of like go wherever you want, but you can never go back. And everybody has that sort of autonomy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I've seen a game pull it off where I'm like, wow, this is really good and medium weight and like in that perfect 1-hour game that I really want. So it sounds like this did not deliver either, but it is a really interesting system. I feel like a core.
If you want the game that does deliver in maybe not 60 minutes, but 90 minutes, Francis Drake.
Or Heaven and Hell does strike me as a really, really good use of that system taken into a much bigger game as well, Kellen. So that was also
although Heaven and Ale is punishing.
Yes, very much so.
Heaven and Ale is tough.
But yeah, that is Parks by Keymaster Games.
Does it have the national parks from Utah in it? Like
I
Zion?
believe Zion was in there. I've definitely seen Zion. I want to say it has almost all of them. It's got a ton of them.
I helped Utah brand their national parks in college. So we called them the Big Five so that people would want to go to like multiple. I mean, Utah has an abundance of national parks, but that was like we made it like a stamp program. So you went to one, but you'd want to go to the other ones within it.
That was cool.
Oh, wait. So you set up a program where people could get like a book stamped with the 5? Mm-hmm. That's really interesting.
And branded it as like the Big Five so that like they weren't just disconnected parks. It was like you would want to go to all of them.
Was this like an early job at a school, or was this like a class project sort of thing, or what?
It was an internship class project that we did at college.
Very cool. Okay, so the first game I want to talk about comes from none other than Uwe Rosenberg, he of Agricola and Patchwork fame. And Patchwork is a nice connection to this game because Fairy Trails by Uwe Rosenberg is also a 2-player only game. The way Fairy Trails works is you will have a hand of 2 cards, and every round you are going to play a card and then draw a card. What you're doing when you're playing a card is you are building sort of a network. The network consists of 2 colors, your color and your opponent's. And so the network looks like sort of like a road system, but the art style is a little psychedelic. The colors of you and your opponent are sort of like a lime green and a light purple. And the roads that you're connecting have these little stations on them, which represent your either fairy, if you're on the fairy team, or elf, if you're on the elf team, homes. And what you're trying to do is you start the game with 19 crystals that represent either the fairy homes or the elf homes. You're trying to get rid of all the crystals. The way you do that is once you have completed a route so that every end of it terminates and it can go no further, then you can place as many fairy homes or elf homes as are on that route. So if I'm on the pink team and I complete a route and there is 2 pink homes on that route, upon completing the route, I can now place my 2 gems on there, trying to get, again, all 19 of my gems on the board. However, as you're doing that, you might be completing your opponent's routes, and then they can place their gems on the board as well. So you have to be a little bit wary of that. There are also situations where you can tell your opponent is almost completed with a route, and then you place a card out, not so much to help your own route complete, but to spread their route. So now they have more ends to try to close off. That's basically all there is to the game. While it's simple in terms of the rule set and sort of simple in terms of the way you play it, that's where the sort of simplicity ends, because I will say that one of the big stumbling blocks that we had playing it is the art, while it's striking, again, it has this psychedelic look to the routes. They're sort of like this neon pink and neon yellow. It's kind of hard to discern where your routes start and end. The board is very busy in that way. And furthermore, because the routes sort of sprout in all different directions and the art is sort of hard to discern, it's quite often that me and my partner, when we were playing it, had a hard time figuring out if a route had been closed off. Like, we put a finger out and say, okay, this end's closed, okay, and follow the track. Okay, now it branches off here. That branch is closed. Now it branches off here. Wait, this branch branches off again. That branch is closed. Now this branch is open, but let me track back. Oh, no, wait, sorry. I'm on the wrong path. So there was a lot of that. Early on, it's not a big deal, but once you have 20, 30 of these tiles out, it can get really tough to figure out which branches are closed because, again, they sprout out at a number of different locations. And I think even if that was more clear, it would make for a more pleasant experience if it was more clear. But still, it just didn't feel like that compelling of a game. I saw Uwe Rosenberg, 2-player game, sort of feels like it flew under the radar, so I was hoping to find like a diamond in the rough. But in the end, I was disappointed by Fairy Trails. I don't think I would have a hard time teaching it to somebody who wasn't a gamer, but it just doesn't seem like it's worth the trouble once you're a little ways into the game, figuring out like, okay, who's scoring, what is scoring, where are we exactly? So that was a little bit of a bummer.
It's funny looking at pictures of this, of like how massive this board gets. I'm just looking at this being like, man, how would you even begin to like trace out all of these paths in a short amount of time?
Yeah, and the thing is, you also need to sort of be careful about your tile placement because you have to be so careful in tracing these routes when you're trying to figure scoring that if they're a little off center, it really breaks up the flow and you're like, wait, hold on, let me straighten these all out. So yeah, Fairy Trails by Uwe Rosenberg, a little bit of a disappointment. The other game I played was not a disappointment. This was Abandon All Artichokes by Emma Larkins. I've got a chance to play this now, both in its BGA implementation and in person. Abandon All Artichokes is a simple deck builder with a very interesting twist that I don't think I've seen in another game, but I could be proven wrong. The way it works is you start the game with 10 artichoke cards. That is your entire deck. Every round, you're going to draw 5 cards, and then you are going to select a card from a shared row. You're going to play as many cards as you want, and then you're going to discard the rest of your cards in your hand and draw back up. The win condition is, upon drawing back up, if you ever draw back up your 5 cards and none of them are artichokes, you instantly win. The actions you can take are all tied to different vegetables. So, for example, if you take the onion card from the row, you can trash an artichoke, but you have to give that onion card to your opponent, put it in their discard pile. There is a carrot card. The carrot card can be the only card you play on turn, but if you play the carrot card, it gets trashed as well as 2 artichokes. So it's a very quick playing game. You get done in 10 minutes, but it's interesting because it has a couple base strategies where you're either going to try to thin out your deck and get rid of all the artichokes, which seems like the most obvious tactic, but you can also play in a different way and fatten your deck in a way where, you may have only gotten rid of a few artichokes, but you have so many other cards that the chances that you're going to draw 5 non-artichokes are heightened, because there are cards like the corn card where you discard it, you don't trash it, you discard it, and you also discard an artichokes, so you still have it, but you get to draw another card from the card row. And again, that's sort of fattening up your deck. I'd heard a lot of good things about this game. I know it got a number of different awards, but it just seemed a little too simple. I wasn't really drawn to it because I just thought it might be a little too quick, a little too light, but I really, really enjoyed it. I had a great time with Abandon All Artichokes. Have you guys played this?
No.
I would definitely recommend at least giving it a shot on BGA. Again, it literally is done in 5-10 minutes. And I really like this shedding idea, this like deck destruction sort of idea. A very fun, quick game, I think.
So based on how you described it, correct me how I'm wrong. It seems like your strategy would either be get rid of all your or get more and there's not necessarily like that in between. I remember feeling like in Path of Light and Shadow where like one of the routes that you could go on, whether it was darkness or lightness, was all about like trashing cards and the other one wasn't. Do you feel like railroaded into one of those two, or are there other ways that are sort of somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, there are ways to pivot for sure.
Yeah.
Like, for example, there's a card, the beat card. If you play the beat card, you randomly give a card to your opponent and they randomly give a card to you. If they happen to both be artichokes, they're both trash. But if not, that's a way to sort of potentially give an artichoke to your opponent in exchange for a non-artichoke. So if you find yourself in a situation where, they're running low on artichokes, my strategy isn't working out, let me try to dump cards to them. So there are opportunities to pivot. And again, the game plays so quick that even if you feel stuck, you're probably okay.
That's cool. Yeah, I want to try it. I've heard nothing but good things. I think this one is, for whatever reason, hugely popular on Board Game Twitter. I feel like I may have seen more pictures of abandoned All Artichokes than anything else on Board Game Twitter over the last couple of years.
And the art style is as sort of adorable as you'd expect with these like anthropomorphic. No.
Yeah, that's right.
Neelan?
Anthropomorphic?
Yeah.
Why'd you ask Neelan?
Because he knows all words. With the anthropomorphized little vegetables and peas and onions and beets and all that kind of stuff. So, yes, I would definitely recommend...
I would have accepted. He knows more about vegetables than me. I like him better than you. But you actually chose the one thing that I'm not going to take.
Really? I thought you would be all on board with that. The words thing?
No.
Okay. Oh,
and there are 3 different countries worth of words.
That's right. England and America, those are 2 wholly different
exactly.
So that is Abandon All Artichokes by Emma Larkins. Give it a shot on BGA. I would definitely recommend it. Kellen.
We all had the opportunity to play a new word game, and we love our word games. And this one is a co-op, so that's the only downside. But this game is called So Clover, as in not so clever, but so Clover, ! So maybe I'm not saying the name right. Neelan?
That is exactly right. So Clover.
Thank you, Neelan.
I think you might need Neelan's help on the designer, though. So don't be so smug.
No, I'm not even going to say the designer. Though with the last name of Romaine, I would have thought that this person would have designed Abandon All Artichokes.
Nice. I like it.
All right.
You really have the tied-in designer names this episode.
So Clover. In So Clover, every player is handed a giant piece of plastic that is a 4-leaf clover, and they are handed 4 word cards, and those cards have 4 words on each side of a square with a hole in the center. So everyone gets 4 cards. And then those are placed randomly on your 4-leaf clover, and no one is watching. And so you have 2 words that are connected to one of the leaves on the 4-leaf clover, and you have that in 4 different places all around the outside of the clover. So you are trying to write a word that will connect both of those words together so that you have a set of sort of 3 words that work together. So if one of the words is tree and one of the other words is burn, you could write book at the top because books come from trees, and you could burn books if you're a horrible person, for example. And so you're sitting there racking your brain just trying to make the closest association you can between those 2 words all around the outside. So you write 4 things. And what's great about the game is this is happening for everyone at once. Everyone is setting up their 4-leaf clover. Then what happens is one by one, you will take all 4 of those cards out of your 4-leaf clover. You'll add a random card and shuffle them up. And then you'll put your 4-leaf clover in the center of the table, and you'll say, ready, go. And the rest of the team, right, because this is a co-op game, will have to sit there and try with those 5 cards, one of which is just a red herring, to rotate them around the board to figure out what you meant in order to score points. And the scoring system is just smart enough to be good and get out of the way, which is that you have 2 guesses. You get a lot of points if you get it right the first time, but the clue giver removes any cards that are wrong, and then you get 1 more guess to get it right. And then you go all around. Everyone gets a turn, sort of like telestrations when you're presenting back to the group. This is the moment where you're sort of hoping they picked up on what you threw down in a really fun and clever way. Difficulty also scales really well because if you're good at the game, you just add more than 1 red herring card. So instead of having to deal with just 1 potential random thing, there might be 4, there might be 3. What did you guys think of So Clover!
I like this a lot. I thought that both the exercise of doing the kind of word connection thing and trying to come up with good clues and the puzzle of trying to resolve like the 4 cards, especially doing that communally, right? Because you can be looking at one word, one of you can be looking at another, you can be like, oh, it's definitely these 2, and then you place them there, you're swapping a card, and then even just the feedback of, okay, no, what is wrong on this when you pass it back to the original player, and then you can then reattempt it with what was correct and what wasn't. It's just a fun little process of closing in on an answer.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it feels like an upper tier new word game, like along the lines of like just one and all that. The cooperative nature, as Nealon and Kellen sort of alluded to, is really fun. Like Kellen goes away and writes these words down and then, throws in an extra card of words. And then we're all there trying to discuss, like, Christina says, oh, I think wood might be for books, but does wood work better for green? Like, because wood comes from trees and trees are, so there's a lot of that discussion, but it doesn't go on too long because there are some obvious connections and you say, okay, well, this card definitely goes here. And for the most part, you're right about that. So it's not a situation where it gets too bogged down generally with like AP, but yeah, really enjoyed it.
And I think because of the spatial nature of it, right, you might be so locked that like, well, wool has to be related to the word sheep, but what the hell does Kellen mean? Because that means that, the word firefighter is linked to Las Vegas. And like Kellen has to be wrong there. And so sometimes you're actually like rotating. You're like, that has to be right. But that means that some other dumb clue, there's something that's way less obvious, almost like in Codenames when, the third or fourth connected word is much more tenuous. You're like, that's the real one, but maybe that's locked in some other way that I can't sort of see. I think that Mark or Nealon, whoever said it, I can't remember. You both are the same to me. That it is upper tier. It feels like one of those games that must have already existed, and you're playing it and you're like, this is just so good. How did this not happen? I think for me, it's like immediately better than Just One. I think that I was not ever the Just One guy, so that's not maybe the biggest praise, but I think this is like really good, and I'm very happy to have it, and I'm very excited to play it over the holidays.
Totally agree. Perfect holiday game, I think.
And that is So Clover by Repos Productions and someone with the last name Romain.
Nealon, do it.
Francois.
Give us a Francois.
I can say Francois Romain. Okay. Francois Romain.
All right, great.
I ordered that last week at
the French salad restaurant. Before we get into the draft, just another quick mention that if you want to hear what will probably be a better draft than this one because our powers combined with Shut Up, Sit Down, I think is something special. Go ahead and check the link in the show notes that will link you to the third day of AwShux, where we participated in a combined draft on their AwShux Twitch channel. Also, a couple notes about PAX Unplugged, where we'll be December 10th through the 12th in Philadelphia. In addition to listeners who are planning to come out there, and you should come out if you're interested and want to hang out and play games with us, we're also interested in talking to designers, publishers, other folks in the board gaming world. So if you're going to be there and are interested in reaching out, reach out to us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. Also, I am very, very pleased, as you might guess, to announce that the PAX Unplugged math trade is going to be run by none other than Board Game Barrage. That is right. We are going to be putting on the PAX Unplugged math trade. This is going to be using the Apecorn system, which is the home of the almost monthly Board Game Barrage math trade. But this will be a no-ship math trade for PAX Unplugged. So if you're going to PAX Unplugged and you're interested in participating in the math trade, go to boardgamebarrage.com/PAX trade, which will link you directly to the trade. By the time this episode comes out, I should have created a revamped how-to video about how to participate in trades on the Apecorn system. We are going to try to make this math trade another beginner-friendly trade. So if this is your first math trade, or if you're interested in doing math trades and haven't done them in the past, we're going to try to make this, again, beginner-friendly. So don't worry about making a big mistake and trading your copy of Chaos in the Old World, New and Shrink for Abandon All Artichokes, although Abandon All Artichokes is a hell of a game. But we'll make sure that nobody makes any outlandishly lopsided trades. So again, if you're interested in participating in the PAX Unplugged math trade, go to boardgamebarrage.com/PAX trade, PAXTRADE. And if you're a designer or publisher or someone else in the board game field who's interested in meeting up at PAX Unplugged, we would love to meet up with you. Email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. Now on to the draft. So for those who are not familiar, I would encourage you to go back to older episodes where we've done this before. What we do is we do a snake draft. So the person who's picking first in the first round will be picking last in the second round, and we sort of snake around. So if it's me, then Nealon, then Kellen, it's going to be my pick, then Nealon, then Kellen will pick again, then Nealon, then back to me. And we are going to be picking games exclusively from games listed between 401 and 500 on BoardGameGeek's list of games as they are ranked. And then finally, as we mentioned before, after you listen to the episode, you can go to boardgamebarrage.com/draft, vote for the collection of games that you like the best, and we will pick somebody at random to get a $50 gift certificate to the online game retailer of their choice. Also, we do not put any restriction on what is the best draft. So whatever collection of games feels best to you is the one you should vote for. So without further ado, I think Kellen won the last draft, breaking his string of never being first but never being last. So Kellen, you have the choice. Do you want to pick first, second, or third?
First, baby.
All right. Kellen takes number one.
Wait, don't we usually do it to the person who came last?
Oh, is that what we do?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I've
Never
never
mind.
gotten last, so I've never gotten the opportunity.
Right. Okay. Sorry. So Kellen, that has been revoked.
You revealed
Nealon.
my strategy. What are you talking about?
Nealon is trading me a pick for me to do that, so I had to trick you. Nealon, as the person who finished dead last,
Yeah.
you get to pick. Do you want to pick first, second, or third?
Ooh, that's tough on this list, but I think I am going to pick... Oh, man, I'm tempted to say third. That's how weird this list is. I'm going to pick third.
All right. Nealon is going to go third. I'm going to leave Kellen with his first because I'm a nice guy.
Got to make it fair.
So, Kellen, you're going to get the first pick. Kellen, take it away.
It's funny. This list is by far the least list that I made like a separate list of like must picks or really want games, right?
I think that's true, but I was surprised by how many games I think are really
There
solid
are
games
some
in the list. I mean, we're
bangers.
still early. Yeah.
Oh, no. They're still great games. It's just
Yeah.
not. Yeah. Anyway, with the number one pick of this very special draft, I will draft, I believe, the newest game to enter my top 50 board games of all time, and that is Smartphone Inc. And that is number 464. Smartphone Inc. just hits in so many classes for me. It is a medium weight game that also works as an economic game that will really scale up and down to people who are a little bit more casual and then people who are a little bit more heavy and say, I only play PAX games. There is something for everyone in Smartphone Inc. I think it is a very, very great game. Very excellent. It's the best at 5 when the competition for the area control works best. I think that looking down this list, I just saw nothing that could replace Smartphone Inc. So I had to have it, and I had to go first to get it.
Interesting, because the game I'm going to pick, I think, is the better version of Smartphone Inc.
Great.
It's
I'm
interesting.
excited for it.
So this is a new game like Smartphone Inc. and sort of in the economic sort of vein. I'm going to go with, say again?
Pipeline?
Pipeline. I'm going with Pipeline. So,
I mean, they're not even close. Pipeline is for tryhards.
okay. Voters?
No. Okay, not even close. I think that Pipeline is quite a bit heavier than what I think.
It is.
Yeah. But I understand what you're saying. I see why you've picked it. I just think there's PAX Porfiriana and a couple other games that also do that will get that audience.
Yeah, I think the PAX games and that kind of stuff share the same audience, but I don't think the PAX games have the economic thing that Pipeline does.
Yeah.
I think Pipeline is among, I'm trying to think now, it's one of the top 3 or 4 best new heavy economic games of the last couple of years. I really think it's a solid game.
Smartphone Inc. was on your short list.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
100%.
Well, I just feel like you came in pretty hot here going, well,
no.
I don't know, Pipeline.
Well, I think Pipeline is the better Smartphone Inc.
Yeah.
But, and Nealon agrees with me.
They were both in my top 5, but with Pipeline above Smartphone Inc. is
Yeah. So,
And Nealon, what percentage of the draft did you get from the setup and sit down draft?
don't put that on me.
so I'm picking game number 424, Pipeline.
Okay, so I get 2 picks in a row here, which was really the only reason I wanted this third spot, because I worry about what is left once it gets back to position 1. And there are definitely some games here that I did not want to lose sight of. The first one is Sidereal Confluence. This is an incredible negotiation trading game that's very open, very diverse in the way that it plays and the way that it allows different means of negotiation trading through its asymmetry, and the way that the game opens up and varies depending on the people you're playing it with. Mark playing a specific faction is very, very different from anyone else playing that specific faction, for instance, because he is a mean man.
That's right.
The other game that I think I really want to get onto my list at this point is...
Escape Plan?
Yeah, exactly. The other game that I really want to get on my list is Archipelago. There is no
I knew that was going to happen.
game in the world quite like Archipelago. It is still the best and maybe the only really good semi-cooperative game, in my opinion. I think that it is a genre that a lot of people play with and don't get quite right in the way that Archipelago gets it right. The way that this captures so many different elements from like the Euro, exploration, negotiation. It's such a fine game. It is a very experiential, big day game that doesn't feel like anything else. And if you have not played Archipelago, you absolutely should find a way to play Archipelago. We should absolutely point out that Archipelago's theme is problematic. It is not an endorsement of its theme. Please use your own judgment as to whether this is something that would dissuade you from playing the game.
All right, back to me. This is an exciting pick. There's a couple of games that I like here, and I think I know the one. Oh, God. There are a couple here that I really like, and I just don't know if I should be aggressive or I should. I'm just going to go with my heart. One of my problems with the last couple of drafts, I'm thinking too much. I'm not going heart picks. So I'm going heart pick here. And I'm going to go with... Say again?
Roads and Boats?
No. I'm going to go with a game that we all love. I would call this, to me, the best party game of all time, for sure. Time's Up. I'm going Time's Up with the second pick, going from heavy pipeline to light and fun Time's Up. Again, I think this is literally the best party game of all time, so this is a no-brainer for me. Time's Up.
So I get 2 picks now? I feel the double pick thing is really hard. All right, so the first pick may be a surprise for some coming from Cal and Allen, the king of party games, but I will be selecting game 480, Pax Porfiriana. So this is a well-known PAX game, but perhaps has become less well-known in the world of PAX Premier 2nd Edition and PAX Renaissance. But Pax Porfiriana is the PAX game that most feels like innovation, another amazing card game. Pax Porfiriana has you playing in Mexico during a revolution in the 1910s era. It is insane. It is wild. It is over the top. There are so many different wind conditions and crazy things that are happening. I have never had a bad game of Pax Porfiriana. It is only not talked about more on the podcast because Phil Eklund is an... But that is my pick. I think it is a fantastic game. I think it rounds out my collection here. Specifically, I think it's an anti-pipeline pick to just make sure I don't get outclassed into heaviness.
You've played this online, right?
I have played it online and offline, and I have it.
Yeah, I have it. I've not played it. We should play this at some point. Cause
let's bring it to PAX Unplugged. Let's do it.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to.
I think it's wild. It is just like, how is this happening? He's been shot. He has a gun store. Oh my God. Like,
you feel like a little bit of a story there?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Good.
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. Pax Porfiriana is so crazy. It's so cool.
Cool.
And that is my first pick along with Smartphone Inc. I didn't think this far. And Archipelago is gone. Nealon
cheats.
Cheats? I should easily have driven home how much this was, well, not designed to hurt Kellen, but that's just the sweet, sweet byproduct.
All right. With the third pick of the draft, I will select the game from probably not the most well-loved game by Paolo Mori, but one of my favorites, and that is Libertalia. Libertalia is a great game because of how well it scales in player count, going all the way up to 6 players. And it even sports a 6 players recommended on BGG. And for a game that has some depth to it, I think you can't really go wrong. In Libertalia, you are simultaneously playing cards, you are collecting money, you are collecting sets. What's interesting about Libertalia is that everyone gets the same set of cards to play with special powers, but you can sometimes hold on to them for upcoming rounds. And so you start the game from we all have the same thing, but it sort of evolves as the game goes. And sometimes you can hold on to a card and really use it to great effect in later rounds. I think Paolo Mori is a fantastic designer who has designed Dogs of War, Ethnos, Vasco da Gama, and other brilliant games. And I think Libertalia is a really good, solid game to have in your collection for the player count when you need something with a little bit of depth. Do you guys like Libertalia? I don't know if we've ever played it together.
I do like Libertalia. My favorite part of Libertalia is what you just mentioned, like the fact that you all start off with the same cards, but then the cards you don't use carry over to the next round, and that's where it starts diverting. I like that sort of like thing about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the only guy left with the 4, and then boom, that gives you the special power.
Yeah, I've only played it once on BGA, and that was not the best venue for it. I would imagine it would be a lot better in real life.
Yeah, the simultaneous reveal on BGA just never works as well as it does in real life when you flip it and people start groaning, you know, because of what you've played.
Exactly.
That's definitely a downfall on BGA for sure.
I will also say that as a strike against Libertalia for Callan, it is way out of print, so good luck trying to play it.
Well, that's why this is the perfect game to have in the collection. Like, if you vote for me, you get these games. Boom. Snap. Boom. Easy money. Libertalia.
Okay, I'm torn here.
And now I will destroy with my 4th destroy. Taj Mahal.
I'm torn again with my 3rd pick. I think there are still a bunch of really good games, but I'm going back to my heart. I'm going to take the 18XX game that's here, 1846. 1846 is the prototypical 18XX plus Euro game. Great way to introduce people who have only played Euro games but who are interested in 18XX to the 18XX genre. Probably one of the first games I will play with these guys when they get the 18XX bug. So yeah, if you're interested in 18XX games but have always been sort of a Euro game player or just traditional hobby games, 1846 is a great entryway into that and a great, fantastic game. Designed by Tom Lehman, who designed the wonderful Race for the Galaxy, of which there is a BGB tournament going on right now, and I'm 2-0. So there you go.
Okay, my 3rd pick is going to be lighter than what I have on my list so far. I am definitely short a party game, and Mark, while he has taken Time's Up, I'm going to take Wavelength, which I think is an excellent game, which is in some ways a lot more versatile. I feel like the way that you can break out Wavelength at a family event without really even having to quite explain the rule set to everyone, you put it aside, you explain the basic premise, like where on this meter do you think this fits, and everyone can get involved. It requires as much or as little engagement as you want, especially in big groups, but it plays just as well as your standard party game with 4 or 5 people around a table. It is nerve-wracking when you feel like you're the person responsible for a specific position of the dial. You hear everyone around you discussing something completely different. It has that fun reveal where you slide the big plastic window open. It just has great presence, and I think it is such a welcome new addition to the light party game realm. I am also, for my pick number 4, I'm going to pick The King's Dilemma, which is a very cool sort of group experience game where you feel like you have a group of people in a shared story campaign experience. It's not really a cooperative game. You are competing with the other players, but there's this idea that you're building something together over the course of your decisions and how they interfere with other people's decisions at the table. It is the closest I've come to a role-playing experience that I actually enjoyed, because I feel like you can engage with that side of it as much or as little as you want to. It has the veneer of sort of a computer RPG, which is to say that your decisions are kind of affecting the flow of the story and the arc of your kingdom, but you're doing it all cooperatively through a sort of an auction bidding system, and trying to get your way when other people are working against you and then just being annoyed at the decisions that your kingdom are going down is such a fun experience. I think this is a really, really cool idea, and one that I would love to play a lot more of.
Gotta say that I do not agree with Wavelength. I think it's a fun game when you're actually playing it, but what kills it for me is the downtime. The downtime is so frustrating when people are trying to figure out how to set their dials and stuff like that. But it's a fun game when you're actually playing it. So Nealon has flirted with co-ops, going with a couple of what could be called semi-co-op. Certainly Archipelago is a semi-co-op. King's Dilemma, you have sort of shared incentives. But I'm going to go with the best co-op on this list. And this is probably going to hurt Kellen a little bit, but I'm going with Hanabi.
Yeah. It's such a... There are people who don't like Hanabi, and the people who don't like Hanabi will not shut the up about it. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to derail you. I'm trying to
I get it. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I get that people can be frustrated with, like, where are the rules, like, what is cheating and what is not. I get that. But I just think it's such an influential game when it comes to, like, co-op design and just, the reversing of the cards is a novel system. And I know there's been a lot of study in terms of, like, AI and Hanabi, and a lot of interesting stuff has come out of that. It's just a very clean design, a very interesting take on co-ops, and a game that I think will stand the test of time. I think it's like one of the classic co-op games. So yeah, for me, Hanabi is best in class for co-ops of this section.
I upgraded to the Domino edition and still haven't played it yet, which is for some reason called Hanabi 2 or Hobby Deluxe 2 or something like that, but it's Hanabi with dominoes.
Unfortunately, I could not pick that, but I'll take straight up Hanabi.
That's why I didn't pick it. Oh, wait, so now I pick twice?
Yes.
Even though I'm not last? So even though I go first, I don't pick last?
No.
How is this snake eating itself?
Well, it would if we played an even number of picks, but...
Oh, but this Ouroboros is odd.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, great. I do not know what my fifth pick is, but I'm going to YOLO my fourth pick. This is an easy one for me. This is one of the very best small box card games. No thanks. This is number 469. I think this is a stone cold classic. Classic game. Everyone loves playing No Thanks. People do not say no to No Thanks. They never say no thanks to playing No Thanks. When you play this game, you are basically just bidding to not take the card because every card is a point. So it's literally a game of chicken. It's throw in a chip and hope everyone believes you that you have more chips in your hand. We will frequently be shaking our fist to pretend like we have more chips in our hand, trying to shake together 2 chips to make it sound like 20 chips, even though we're on our last bit of chips. I really think that if I reduce my collection to 10 games, No Thanks may make the cut for its versatility and ability to just play with anyone. I think that it is so light that I may get docked here just a smidgen for it, but I really think it is a heavyweight for being a lightweight.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the top 5-10 light games of all time.
For sure. Now, the difficult dilemma of what's left of the garbage that's left. You think I'm going to draft Forbidden Desert right now? No one has ever even played that game in 5 years. Probably. Who could say? Actually, we could check, but we won't. Mark, is my list too heavy or too light? Answer honest.
Yeah. I think it's pretty good in terms of weight. You got Pax Porf on one side, you got No Thanks on the other, and I think the other two fit right in the middle. So I think you're pretty balanced.
Photosynthesis? All right, with the last pick, I am going with one of my favorite games, and I think this will be a little bit of a knock, but I implore you, listen to my passion. As Ava taught me, follow my passion. Ingenious, by the only true and living Dr. Rainer Knizia. This is a tile-laying game that is amazing. If you've been seeing on Board Game Instagram, oh, Witchstone, everybody can't shut the up about Witchstone. It's based on Ingenious. Dummy. So be a genius, get Ingenious. It's a really good game. In my top 50 board games of all time, I would not leave home without Ingenious. Actually, I do all the time, but it's very good. It's very good at 2, 3, 4, team game at 4. Play Ingenious. Play Ingenious. Vote for Kellen. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. That is how you draft, boys.
Okay, for my last pick, I'm torn between one of 2 games, but I think I'm going to again...
Tell us what they are. We can't do anything about it.
Well, Nealon can do something about it.
Oh.
But I'm going to tell him the game that I'm not going to pick, but I was torn between. Because I think it'd be nice to have a dexterity game here. And I think for dexterity, I would probably pick Junk Art, although Pitch Car is a very good pick as well.
Yeah.
But the game I'm going to go with one for 2 reasons. One, because I trademark Go With My Heart. And 2, it dovetails with Hanabi well for the AI aspect, and it also is in the news now because the World Championships of chess between Magnus Carlsen the Great who's been the world champion for a number of years now, and Nepo, the latest challenger. It's starting in a month. And so for my last pick, I'm going to go with the classic game, chess. I know that there is a like knee-jerk reaction that, oh, you're picking chess, you're picking like a deck of blank cards to make whatever game you want, that kind of thing. Chess is a great game. I mean, look, I'm saying chess is a great game. It's a pretty stupid thing to say, but it's so interesting. There's so much history to it. There's so much depth to it. If you scratch the surface even a little bit, I'm not an expert at all, but there's so much like interesting history about the players of chess, the history of the game of chess, the evolution of openings and end games through the years, and with the influence of computers. There's so much to it that if you just scratch the surface, there's like a lot of interesting aspects to it. I'm happy, again, following my heart and going with chess to round out my collection.
Fun fact about chess, it has 10,000 less reviews on BoardGameGeek than Hanabi.
I was worried I was going to be having the oldest pick among the three of us with 2,000, and then Mark went for 1,475.
That's right. Classic year in BoardGameGeek.
Yeah.
75.
My game is, I think, the better Knizia game on the list, in my opinion. I think Taj Mahal is incredible. This is definitely a passion pick for me, and it is one that I feel very strongly about. This is actually, in fact, my favorite Knizia game. It is a really fun auction-like game where you are using cards in order to purchase different lots, but every auction is multiple auctions happening at the same time, and you can see all of the auctions lined up, and especially in the newer version of this, it is just a beautiful production with palaces and beautiful colors. It is a lovely game, a game that I would happily recommend to anyone if you've not played it. That is my fifth and final pick, Taj Mahal.
I am excited to get to the patron only off the record because I have no idea how this is going to shake out.
Yeah, so as Kellen is alluding, as soon as we end each episode of the show, we record a special off the record that is available to patrons only. So if you're interested in getting those off the record episodes, go to boardgamebarrage.com/Patreon and join up. That also gives you access to our patron only Discord, which is a very nice spot to go and chat about board games 24 hours a day.
As well as bonus episodes of the show once a month where we talk about things that aren't board games, like movies, TV shows, books that we're reading, and general shenanigans, like when Mark locked me out of my house.
I assume Dune is going to be big in our next bonus episode. But that is going to wrap it up for the episode. Again, go to boardgamebarrage.com/draft to vote on the collection of games that you like the best to review. Those collections are Kellen had Smartphone Inc., Pax Porfiriana, Libertalia, No Thanks, and Ingenious. I went with Pipeline, Time's Up, 1846, Hanabi, and Chess. And finally, Neelan went with Sidereal Confluence, Archipelago, Wavelength, The King's Dilemma, and Taj Mahal. We will be picking a voter at random and sending you a $50 gift certificate to the online retailer of your choice. We have done this for people around the world, so don't let geography limit you. Go to boardgamebarrage.com/draft and vote. You can find us on all forms of social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. You can email us, especially if you're going to go to PAX Unplugged, at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. A big thank you, as always, to Heart Society for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? And until next week, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sorry, let me just grab that real quick.
Yeah. And what's what number are we on now?
197. Ooh, Mark's going to get 200.
That's right.
How does that always happen?
Wait till you see what I do with 200. It's going to be horrific. Okay. But before we get back into the draft, is there a funny thing about draft? But before we get caught up in the draft again, like wind, because wind is like a draft.
No, but before we get caught up in the draft, let me close the door and talk about the game.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, I'll use that, and then I'll use that as an outro too,
and then pretend it was yours.
Right? Yeah. Right. No, I'll use that for the outro. I'll use I'll do it, and then I'll use you recommending it as the outro. But before we get caught up in the draft, let me close the door on that and then and talk about the games we played? Is that how it doesn't sound as good?
That's so good.
Okay.
I'm so happy.
Okay. But before we get caught up in the draft, once again, to us about So Clover. Jesus, let me shut that dog up. 1 second. Sorry.
Wow, we'll have to cut this part or you'll lose the will of the people. Dog. Get him out of here. Mark loves his animal. Except when he has to get it to shut the up and get out of the room.
Anything else?